maybe let's see, hold on. Okay, I think I'm on. I guess we'll know when people start to text me, hey, I can't hear you. Okay, so good morning. Thank y'all for being here. I am not Avis, love her, and I am not her, so I apologize. And also Scott is not going to be here today. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. We're just going to jump right into risk management. I have a document back from January. It was the 9th of January this year, and a lot of people were still on vacation, so I figured we'll just go over this one more time, and then I'll open up the floor to answer any questions that I can answer. And if I can't, well, we'll call Avis and find out. So, all right, so risk management today is going to be on the outdated seller's disclosure, which you shouldn't be getting any of those. How many have gotten an outdated seller's disclosure recently? Yeah, okay, well, we are getting those. Okay, so what happens when, yes? I'm sorry, that's a great question. Outdated means that there was recently a new seller's disclosure that just came out. Okay, back earlier. Okay, and actually I think it was later last year. Anyway, so there was one that came out, and a lot of people are still using an older form. And so, so the goal is when you get a seller's disclosure, you're obviously going to want to review it. If you're the buyer, or even if you're, okay, let's start with listings. If you're the listing agent and you go to your appointment, you should all have the new seller's disclosure. If you created your own loop, like your own templates in dotloop, which is where a lot of this comes across for KW agents or anybody that has a customized loop where you filled in everything already, so you can just press a couple buttons, it's already done. That's typically where you guys will find that you're using the wrong seller's disclosure. So if any time you have your own separate template loop that you pull documents out of because they're pre-filled with your broker information, you're going to want to make sure that you watch for all the notices that come out through Avis and through Mary Zumwalt, making sure that you have the most recent up-to-date documents in your loop. Yes?
So I was looking on last night to go to form, and not all forms are updated in all of the different subcategory groups.
So if they are in the categories buyer contracts, seller's contracts, and office documents, TAR and TREC, or TR now, and TREC, they should be updated. So if you're finding one that's not, send it to Mary. It's possibly the most recent version. If you know of one that's different, then definitely let Mary know so she can update it right away. The ones that I find that are not updated are in your own personal template subcategory, if you will. So for instance, I used to do seller contracts, buyer contracts, and I knew they were mine. So that way I could just fill out all the broker information, and it took me 20 minutes to fill out a contract if I was sent with my buyer or my seller. Yes?
Which seller's disclosure does KW like you to use?
You can use whichever you want. Avis will tell you that the version, let me just pull it up for you real quick. Because, so, how do I put this? You just want to use, let me re-log in. I guess I have no internet all of a sudden. You want to use the one that has enough information that you're required to offer and that doesn't offer too much information. It's not that offering too much information is bad. It just can get confusing because, it's a lot of extra information. People aren't used to looking at that same seller's disclosure. So if you're using ABORs, then quite possibly you're giving them a lot of extra information that is great and not necessarily required.
Avis seems to be starting to favor the commission.
Yes. Yes.
Disclosure as much as the association, which is new.
Well, sorry, I don't know why this is not working. Let's try again. I will tell you that she's fine with any of them. Really, what we want to know is to make sure that you're comfortable with the one that you are using. Okay, I don't have a password. That's great.
I can't log into mine either.
Oh, is it down today? Okay, give me just a second. Oops, wrong one. Okay. Maybe. We're playing with internet today. We'll see how it goes. Maybe if I just open it. It's thinking. There we go. So when you have the TR version, this is the one that you'll probably see most of the time. Wouldn't you agree, Pat? Yeah. And so the fact of the matter is, it's just fairly simple to read, and it's straightforward, right? It has a lot of information, and yet it's clear. I don't know if anyone has seen ABORs. Has anyone used ABORs? It's a lot, and it's everywhere, and it's not necessarily structured. So the most important, absolute most important thing is that you understand how to read one of these, because you should never be filling one out. It is completely up to your seller or the seller, whoever, if you have the buyer, to fill one of these out. And typically the conversation that I would have is, you know, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is a seller's disclosure, and this is your chance to disclose anything that's going on with the property. As you go through, it's going to ask you 3 questions, yes, no, or unknown. Please answer accordingly. I cannot give you descriptions on what these are. So if they don't know what a French drain is, you don't describe it for them. No. So if you do describe it for them, and maybe you're off and you don't necessarily know what a French drain is, and you're kind of assuming, and let's say they say there's a French drain in the property based on your description of what a French drain was, then who's held liable if there's not a French drain? So you should not be given descriptions on any of this. You should slide this over to them and say, please fill it all out. Please note that if there are really clean items, there's nothing wrong with your house unless it was built yesterday, and I could still promise there's probably something going on, then it's always questionable in a buyer's mind. So I want you to think through this and just put down anything that you can see as you're going through. So answer accordingly is what I tell them. And a lot of times they come through here and they say, well, I mean, we've had the foundation looked at and it didn't need repair. So it asks, are there previous foundation repairs? How would you answer that question? Anybody know?
No. No repairs.
You would say, how do you feel you should answer that question? It's tricky, and I know, because you want to help them and you want to save them, right? Most importantly, though, is that you know how to read one. So when you're the listing agent, you just want to, make sure you're using the correct one. So February 1st of 2018 is the newest one for TR. I'm not sure about the ones for ABOR or TREC. Any of the forms are fine, just as long as you know how to read them. So after your seller fills it out, you can make sure that it's fully completed. It is okay to go back and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I noticed that here on page 5 of 5, you haven't fully filled out the electricity portion of the seller's disclosure. And in fact, it's really best that you do that so the buyer knows exactly who to contact for their utilities. Also, if you're in a MUD district, it's really important that you note that on the report, so that way you're now disclosing to the potential buyer that you are located in a MUD district, and then they can go ahead, once we provide the WCID, which we're also going to talk today, then they'll have full disclosure on the MUD district. Is that clear? So when we're talking about going back to expired, we want to make sure that it's the most recent form. Now, let's go back and say you're the buyer's agent and you get a form that says like 2015. Okay, the first thing you want to do is completely review it, just as if you were the listing agent, making sure that your client has filled it all out completely and that there aren't any blanks left that possibly they just missed, okay? So if you're the buyer's agent, things you should be looking for is 1, the date. It needs to be the most recent form, because if you give this to your buyer, and you will, because you're busy and you're writing them, maybe even multiple offers, and they sign it, you send it in, you're really happy, and then a week before closing, Mary sends you a wonderful little email that says, hey, by the way, the seller's disclosure is out of date. So we need the sellers to go back and refill out the seller's disclosure, and then we need the buyers to go back out and read and sign and initial any changes that may have been made, right? Because now it's not just a new seller's disclosure, come on in, based on what was previously written. Now it's based on what is known. So had the seller had an inspection, or something happens. I had a listing one time where rats had chewed the pipes in the winter, and we had 6 leaks throughout the house, 2 years old, by the way. And so had we had to refill out a seller's disclosure, even though it was disclosed, it'd have to be redisclosed on the seller's disclosure, right? Because it's new known information at the time of filling it out. Does that make sense? That's a lot of mud I just went through. And to say, it's just easier to make sure that it's the right form and it's correctly filled out before your buyer signs it. Because as a buyer's agent, it is your job to protect your buyer. The other thing that I've noticed compliance really kind of being stern on is to make sure that it is completely filled out as a buyer's agent. And, you know, in the past it was like, well, it is what it is. That's what they filled out. Here, read it and accept it if you want, or if you have questions, we'll send it back. Now, it's best business practice just to say, hey, I notice, Mr. or Mrs. Listing Agent, that the electricity information hasn't been filled out, or the utilities. So do you mind having your sellers go back and just refill that out so I can then have my buyer sign it? Anybody done that? Yes, Nancy?
I had trouble with one on water. I had one in Cedar Park, and it was some off-the-wall water deal. I don't even remember now who it was, but oh my gosh, I was looking, the buyer was looking, because the seller didn't put what company it was, and we had a heck of a time finding out.
And it's tough, especially when you're like in that last week of right before closing, and there's a lot of stress, and the financiers are finally coming in, and there's maybe some pressure on repairs. It's always best just to ask ahead of time, hey, do you mind just snapping us, a picture of your water bill? We don't even need the rest of the information, just the information. If they're not going to write it, can we have something to attach to that so that my buyers can initial? Again, yes, Andy.
I just wanted to add that in San Antonio, they require that the seller shield be done.
So yes, and we used, so your brokerage required that. So that's brokerage specific, and you can talk to them about seller shield. I used to talk to my agents or my clients about seller shield. And you just want to make sure that they understand that it's a legal service that can help them fill out that portion, and that provides legal representation, and that they need to look further into that. So I wouldn't go into details on Seller Shield if you're going to offer that option. I think it's $200, $199 if they buy it when they fill it out, and then $300 if they buy it at closing. And it's supposed to protect the sellers should something go awry, and they can also answer questions specifically to the seller's disclosure. We don't require it, and I would also recommend that you heavily advise your client to look into it before purchasing anything.
I offer it as one of my perks.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely, as long as you explain to them that they should look into it as well. Because you don't want to promise them, you don't ever want to say no one can sue you because you have this coverage, because anybody can sue you for any reason. So just be careful about what you're locking yourself into if you are purchasing that for them or providing that to them. It is a really good option. I think you have to purchase now. It used to be free. You could go into their website and they had an interactive seller's disclosure, so they can just kind of hover over something on the actual seller's disclosure itself, and it would tell them a definition like what is a French drain, so you wouldn't have to tell them. So it's up to you if you choose to offer that service. Any questions on that?
What is the date of the last release?
February 1st for the TR version of this year. I don't know about ABOR. ABOR should be updated on their website. And then, of course, TREC. Any of the TREC and TAR forms in .loop will be updated, because those link directly to their website and pull them in. So it doesn't hurt to verify, just in case. Disclaimer. I disclaim everything just in case. All right, any other questions on what happens if you get an expired seller's disclosure, or what happens if it's not filled out? Yes, Andy.
How long is the seller's disclosure good for?
That's a good question. Well, how do I answer this? So, in what way are you asking?
Well, sometimes you might have a property that you have listed for 6 months, and
Mm-hmm.
you get another 6-month renewal.
Okay.
And you don't, and this is where outside getting from investors or whoever, you know, that they don't renew the,
Sure.
they don't do another seller's disclosure. And I think after 6 months or 3 months even, you should get a new seller's disclosure because you don't know what's happening to that property. Unless
Sure.
you're really close to that person.
I think that it's appropriate to ask the question, do you know of anything that has happened in the property within the amount of time that it's been listed since this has been filled out that needs to be updated on the seller's disclosure? Because again, anything that happens on the property, which even in a week, we could have a hailstorm and it could damage the entire roof, right? So you would want to know these things. Have you been through, you know, ask questions and dig deeper. It is okay to ask for an updated seller's disclosure. Again, you're there to protect your buyer. So I think that's completely appropriate. You know, I think then the conversation happens if the fact is the seller doesn't want to refill one out, then I would just advise your buyers that, you know, we can ask for maybe in writing or kind of dig deeper into that as to why they wouldn't want to do that. Because I think most people would be willing to, as long as there's not any issues.
I just have them initial and sign again with another new date.
Your seller?
Yeah, that's real easy to do.
I mean, if there's been nothing that's changed and they are disclosing that there's nothing that's changed, then that's their priority. Any other questions on that? You have a question?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, no, that's okay. All right. Okay, so let's go back to, we were talking about WCID. And then here's what Avis says. Perhaps you may want to say, since you were doing such a good job for your seller, I'm sure it just slipped your mind that the legislature made some changes in the session last year that caused an update to the mandatory seller disclosure document. Certainly you and your seller would want to comply with the law and use the most current one since the old ones have been replaced by law. Repealed. I'm sorry, did I say repelled? Repealed. Yes. Yep. I mean, how are you going to say no to that? I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that may still. And again, if you're protecting your buyer, you just want to make sure that you're reading over that. It's not a document you just want to just attach to something and send it, you know, pull it off of transaction desk or whatever you're using with the MLSs that you're using, and then, you know, just send it over, because ultimately you would be held liable by compliance to make it right. And they're going to ask you to go back and do this. And I think it's really hard to sit in front of your client halfway through the transaction to say, you know, I probably should have gone back to them and asked for this. I'm going to do that now. And it could, you know, cause some issues possibly depending on where you're at in the transaction. So just do it beforehand, get out of the way. Yes, Mike?
I always just blame compliance anyway. Just say, compliance is going to send it back.
And they're okay with that. They're totally okay with that. And sometimes you'll still have agents that push back. And so that's why I'm saying if you do it ahead of time and use compliance, they're probably going to be like, sure, because obviously you guys are negotiating possibly and you want the deal to go through. So you definitely want to get it done, though, before you. Yes, Sylvia.
What about a property that's going to go through probate and the person that lived there really didn't live there, but yet the son took care of, who inherited the property, took care of the property and had been taking care of the property for years? Is he liable for filling out a seller's disclosure? I know that when it's a trust, that you don't have to have one, but.
So, and you guys hot? Well, okay, no, it is warm. So when it comes to probate, obviously if they haven't lived in the property, I mean, let's say they did provide you with a seller's disclosure. What then would you say to your buyer? Possibly these people haven't lived or ever been into the property. We don't know. I know people who haven't talked to family members in years, right? So possibly the seller's disclosure doesn't have enough information for you to conclude anything. So then it would be our due diligence to make sure that we have all the necessary inspections, service people over to make sure that the property is in the condition that you'd prefer, which is what the option period is for. Having that conversation up front, again, is really important. So you don't just give them the seller disclosure and it looks real clean and all the checks are nice, everything's yes, there's no problems, and then you open up under the sink and you see that there's been 5 termite treatments when obviously on the seller's disclosure it says never had a termite treatment. So those are the things, and you'll find that, and that's hard to know even with someone who's lived in the property. It's really hard to know those things, which is why due diligence is in place for the buyer. It's just in those situations when they're not necessarily required to do that, in the probate situation, or trust, if they haven't lived in the property, yet most of them will try, or their agents advise them to do so. And so I would just say, hey, I noticed that this isn't a trust. It's marked that they've never lived in the property. You may want to understand that there is not enough information to conclude whether things are in good condition or not. So it will be up to us and the expense is up to us to make sure our due diligence is done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Well, I'm glad we brought this up today. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm bringing it up too because I've had a lot of calls about seller's disclosures and compliance saying, hey, I need this done and I need that done. And so I just want y'all to know why, and really because it's just an extra layer of protection for your buyers and your sellers. Awesome. Okay. The mud and water notices. Let's see, where am I at here? Okay. So, when is the best time to get a mud and water notice signed by the seller? At the time of the listing is the right answer. So, have all of you done, or have most of you done deals where there has been a water district notice? No? A couple of you? Where do y'all go to find the district notices? HOA. Awesome. I didn't hear title. It used to be people just like text title and be like, hey, can you pull the mud notice and send it to me? That's not always the updated version. So again, just like the seller's disclosure, you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence if you are the listing agent, and Google the mud district and go directly to their website. Sometimes even if you are in the CAD and you click on that taxing entity, it will take you to their website so you don't have to Google everything. If you're lucky, it'll take you right there. Most of the time it won't, and you could try. Any questions on where to find it? Everyone know what we're talking about. These are water district notices if your property that you're listing is in a municipal utility district or in a water district. So, and there's of course a lot, especially with newer subdivisions. A lot of times they are in mud districts or water districts. And there's yes, not the whole Round Rock, no, just some of the more recent, and a few of the other ones. You also have neighborhoods that are in, like Georgetown Village is in a PID, which is a property improvement district. Yeah, and so those are a little different than this and still would need disclosure. So just knowing what those words are and knowing why it's important to have this signed is going to be imperative to your buyers and sellers. So, of course, she says last resort, ask the title company. Just make sure that it's the most recent version. Okay, so Chapter 49 of the Texas Water Code. She put this in here because obviously she wants you to understand why you have to have this signed by the seller and provided the buyer before you go under contract. So it's required by this section to be given to the prospective purchaser prior to the execution of a binding contract of sale and purchase, either separately or as an addendum or a paragraph of a purchase contract. Do not put this in special provisions. Don't do it. Don't do it. Nothing in paragraph 11 unless you get Avis's approval. Okay, so don't put that in special provisions. Why? Because there's a form for it. Okay? In the event a contract of purchase and sale is entered into without the seller providing the notice required by this subsection, the purchaser shall be entitled to terminate the contract. So that option period that your buyer was like, oh, I have this time, and the seller's like, oh, just like let's get through option period, and this hasn't been provided yet. And I've had that situation where I've seen people not provide these until later on, they forgot, it wasn't signed, what have you. It says the purchaser shall be entitled to terminate the contract. Okay? So if, however, the seller furnishes the required notice at or prior to closing of the purchase and sale contract, the purchaser elects to close, even though such notice was not timely furnished prior to the execution of the contract, it shall be conclusively presumed that the purchaser has waived all rights to terminate the contract and recover damages. So, anyways, it goes on with a lot of legal jargon, and most importantly to say, provide it ahead of time, and if you have the buyer, you're going to want to ask for the water district or the MUD notices ahead of time, because compliance will ask you to go back and get those. Mike?
I did have this issue and I didn't even realize I needed to do it.
Sure.
And I know it's kind of onus is on us, but isn't that why we have compliance? And we pay compliance to look at this? Because I found out a week before closing that I had to do it, and then I disclosed it.
Mm-hmm.
Which now I'm finding out that the sellers could have, or the buyers could have backed out.
Yes.
Closing.
Yes, they could have, yes. And based on what this is, and of course there's other factors that I'm sure that are involved. Here's the thing with compliance, and I get this question often, it's a very fair question. Compliance is working their hiney off. And what actually happens is that most people do not submit their loops in a timely fashion, period. So you're supposed to have your loop submitted once your documents are signed. Now there are some instances like with a buyer where you can submit your loop within 24 hours out of option. Now, is it really in your best interest, if you're the buyer's agent, to submit a loop to compliance that late? No, because you're already a week behind. Now, what I think the point that you were getting to and what other people have asked is that, well, when we submit them before or just when we have finished documentation, it doesn't get looked at. Well, what's happening, which I'm sure maybe some in the room, and I'm not going to look at anybody, I'll pull the Avis trick just in case, because I don't know who's done it, possibly are rushing to get documents in because they forgot things, which is normal in this business because sometimes that happens, and quite possibly you're rushing to get a DA, and it actually stops everybody else that's in that process. And it's kind of just like your day. When you get interrupted by something and you're putting out this fire, and then you're putting out this fire, and then you're behind on all this other stuff, right? So what compliance is really working on is getting everybody to get everything in a timely fashion, so that way there's no delay in finding out that a week before closing you're missing a document. There are contract checklists right into dotloop that will tell you everything they're going to need. And I put those in every single one of my loops whenever I was doing a loop. I put it in and check it, check it, check it, submit, check it, check it, check it, submit. You can write a song with it. Check it, check it, check it, submit. So just making sure that you're helping them out, because unfortunately really compliance is working with almost 400, a little over 400 people now. So when you have probably 80% of the people in both market centers providing their documentation late, it's hard for them to catch up. And so it does delay those who do them on time. And they are working out a way so they can make sure that those who are doing it on time get seen first. It's just sometimes with DAs, people, it's finances, they want to make sure your checks are cut, so they're doing what they can. Angela.
I think it's probably a good idea to tell people how they know that that property is going to look, like looking on the website.
Sure, yes. So again, in the contracts checklist, it's going to ask you to put the MLS form into dotloop, right? So in that MLS form, it should state that it's in a MUD. That's one disclosure. Two disclosure, it should be on the seller's disclosure in the utilities portion, which is why if you're the buyer's agent, you're going to go back and ask, hey, is this possibly in the MUD? Most importantly, though, that you go to the CAD, and the CAD will tell you what taxing entities are taxing that specific property. You could have a property across the street that has different taxing entities, so you're just going to want to make sure that you check with CAD. And you should be asking those questions already knowing the answer, because you're just, you just want confirmation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just
okay.
Yes,
yes. So.
I went across one. I'm from the country. We didn't have those.
Sure.
I was like, what the heck does that mean?
What's a MUD? Right. So the Williamson County Appraisal District, Travis County Appraisal District, Hayes County, Belton, wherever county you're in, go to the appraisal district and it'll show you all the taxing entities for that specific property. Andy.
Hey, did I miss something? But do you have that option period, whether it's 7 or 10 days or whatever you use.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you want to wait till after that option period before you submit? Because if they do back out, then it's just extra paperwork for compliance.
That's what they told me was the day after auction period is over, and that's also a good time for green sheet.
So I ask you, sure, and I can understand, and I ask you this: if you're submitting a week after option or a day after option is over, so possibly 10 days in the contract, 7 to 10 days on average, then how are they going to catch early enough? That only gives them 1 week to catch the fact that you didn't have documents in. So yes, you can do that, and that's been a practice. However, I would just put in, especially if you're questioning that you have all the documents there, if you haven't sent it to myself or to Scott, if you want it to be reviewed, then it's appropriate to send it in. As soon as you get your buyer's stuff done, I submit. And
we're legally obligated by that contract once it's signed.
that's right. So I submit right away. And I think the most important thing is just that you submit as early as possible. Once you go under contract, you can just, shoot over a little message, hey, Mary, I'm submitting this. We just went under contract. There were a lot of extra amendments to this. Can you look it over, make sure I have everything I need? So that way you're not 10 days into the contract going, oh no, we're almost out of option. I've been so busy doing inspections and I have other deals going on that I've forgotten to double check to make sure I've had everything. So, so you didn't miss it. I would just say, you have both options. It's just, for me, I would prefer to do it earlier rather than later. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to, if you guys need to shuffle or use the restroom. It's already 11 o'clock and we've gone over. I hope this helped. All right, okay. We'll move into team meeting.
Is the same true when you're taking a listing that
All right. So good morning again. Today is the 25th, I believe, isn't it?
I think it is.
All right, good. Whew. I did that right. You may see some errors on this, and I apologize ahead of time. I did my best to make sure there were none. So thank you all for coming today. I know it's a little bit empty, and we're going to find out why in just a second, but I just want to say thank you for being here today. Make sure all your cell phones are turned off if you can, unless there's an emergency going on. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to do Tell Me Something Good. We're going to have our quote for the day. We're going to make some announcements for the Market Center. Look at what's on the calendar. We're going to talk about what happened in Bold. I have a couple Bold students in here that might be able to share. We're going to do a skill spotlight on telling your story, finding your passion. And then we're going to talk about a little bit of risk management. And then we're going to do Tell Us About It, which will be when you prepare to share your listings and buyers and such. All right? All right, so tell me something good. I like to start a meeting off with positivity, and it gives me energy. So tell me, who's had something good happen to them? What's something good that you've done? I'd love to hear about it. Yes.
I'm going to stand up in front of the class anyway.
Please.
I don't know how many of you all know about the Assistance League thrift store down Austin Avenue, behind the Starbucks, and that near CVS Pharmacy. No, okay, you know now. It's a fabulous thrift store, and they have scholarship programs. All the people are volunteers, except the only thing they pay for is the building, and so there's scholarships. Every school year, they give $100 per child for clothing. This is in Gerald schools and some here in Georgetown. So everything that people donate, all the profit goes to the community. So if you get a chance, go down there. It's between CVS and the dollar store. The Sears just opened up again, by the way. They had a band the other day.
On Austin Avenue?
Mm-hmm.
That versus Austin Avenue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just right there at Williams and Austin.
It's called, what's that? It's called,
Assistance League of Georgetown.
the shopping center is
Oh,
supposed to have a name.
Public Square?
Yeah, Republic Square.
Yeah.
Yeah, Republic Square.
What about donations?
They take donations, we're closed on Mondays, but they take donations up until about 3:30 every day.
Do they provide pickup?
They do have a guy that will pick up if it's an estate,
Okay.
and they'll pay for that. And then they also have a guy that I saw the most gorgeous table in there yesterday. That was already sold, but you can pay a Dorian to take it to your house. And he's pretty cheap.
Dorian too?
Uh-huh.
He's my friend.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Wonderful.
So, anyway.
Awesome.
That's good.
Thank you so much, Janie. Thank you. All right. Who else has something good they want to share? There's got to be more good happening in the world right now. The water went down. That's a good thing. Yeah. My backyard was definitely a lake for a little while, and my poodles played in that after spending a lot of money to get them groomed. However, they had fun, so that was good. What else? What else? Going good. Yes?
We have an agent here, T.L. Anderson. She doesn't get to be here a whole lot because she is starting a business called Slice of Heaven Educational Farms. And we had our sneak peek this week, and it was, I would consider it an excellent turnout. She wants she wants more, but we're going to have the grand opening on the 6th, and it's in Holland, and it is really, really incredible what she's done with this place. So I'm going to post some videos on Facebook later. I might put it on our page.
Yeah, please put them on the Georgetown Market Center page. Come on in.
And it's her life passion. So she's spent the last year probably getting that all situated.
Hey, Lauren, it's warm in here. Do you mind turning down the AC a little bit? Awesome, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd love to see those videos. Who else? Birthdays, celebrations, anniversaries. My kid feels better today. He was sick yesterday at home, and he never stays at home because he's loving 8th grade, which, oh, thank you. I'm so glad he loves 8th grade. And so he's at school today, so that definitely is a blessing in our house that he's feeling better. Anybody else have anything else?
Well, I just celebrated a birthday, and I had 2 friends from the UK come over.
Oh, wow.
They loved the Texans.
Do they need a real
I was going to say, good thing they know a wonderful realtor.
They haven't met, they didn't unfortunately meet a guy.
Oh.
Single. I was hoping that he would text them.
Sure.
They
They'd stay.
Sure, Bernie, yeah.
You may have somebody to help you out with that. Awesome.
So what age group? We have a lot of single guys
Oh
around here.
my gosh. They're in their 30s. Late 30s.
Thank you for sharing, and happy birthday. Andy?
I got several things. First of all, I'm 10 years cancer-free.
Yay!
It's a good thing, and I wanted to remind you of the, there's a march, and I was looking back on my phone, and I can't remember when it is for breast cancer awareness.
Mhm.
I think it's downtown. If I get it, I'd like to post it for everybody, but I think, it's important that, that women do their due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Check. My sister died of cancer, breast cancer, so I'm real close to that foundation. The other thing is there is Cruising for a Cause.
Mm-hmm.
That's at the town center, right here, the big town center, this Saturday, and I'll have my car in the show there. So
Awesome.
if you all want to come and just hang out at the town center and look at cars and do your shopping.
Thank you for sharing that.
The square?
The big town center, that's all I know.
Are you talking about Wolf Ranch?
Wolf Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And isn't the wine festival this weekend?
Is it?
Saturday.
Is that the swirl or no?
Wine and music festival.
Oh, hey.
Saturday.
Wine. I like music. I'm not a wine drinker.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's from noon to 8
On the square?
on the square. You can go online, I believe, now and get tickets for 25, but I think you can get them at the door for 35.
Y'all are welcome to come in and sit down. We don't bite.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
I understand of 4 local bands. That's
Awesome.
I just read about that this morning. That's the only reason I know. What to do this weekend?
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else have anything? Yes. Pedro.
2 things. I am 9 months cancer-free,
Yay.
and I'm glad to be here at Calvary.
We're glad you're here. Yes, we're glad you're here. I love your story. All right. Thank y'all for sharing. Sorry, my screen has to notice me. I'll have to set the time frame longer. Okay. All right. So quote of the day, Will Rogers, don't let yesterday take up too much of today. Don't let yesterday take up too much of today. And I think that just by our celebrations of being cancer-free and, tells us that we kind of have to just keep moving forward and celebrate every single day, right? And not let it take up too much of today, because it can just really bring you down sometimes. As a survivor myself, I know that, and I think we have a lot of survivors in the room. So thank you all for sharing that story, and it fit very well, because today's a new day and tomorrow's a new day, and onward and upwards, right? Awesome. Okay, Market Center announcements. So we have a KW Tech Lab. We have someone coming from KWRI to run a lab on October 19th. It's from 10 a.m. to noon. It will probably be Command, from my understanding, and possibly some other intertwined parts. So you'll want to be there for that. You don't have to RSVP, although we'd love to pack the room. It is free for you, and I'd love to see you here. Business Planning Clinic is October 16th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Y'all need to be here unless y'all have your business plans in place for 2019. Does anybody have that? Okay, awesome. I am looking forward to seeing everyone here at the Business Planning Clinic, and I'll tell you that October is the best time to plan for 2019, because December gets busy. You have family and holidays and all these different events. So I definitely, I myself take time out in October, and we'll be doing some other classes after that on setting first quarter goals and things like that based off your business plan. So have a plan. Yes, I did see that. Did anybody else see that you got the email and the invitation? All right, so check your emails today, because it is there. It is there. All right. Legal 1 and 2. I know I need that. October 5th. Scott is teaching it right here in this room. So Legal 1 and Legal 2. And it's $20 that's going to go to KW Cares. And I think on average they're $40 to $45 a piece if you take them outside the market center. So make sure that you do RSVP to either Donna or Lauren or myself or Scott. Just let someone know that you're coming so he knows to prepare the number of seats appropriately.
There's an Eventbrite for that too.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, and that will go out again. I think it's gone out once already.
It has.
All right, Scott is not in the Market Center today, and there's quite a few agents that are out of the Market Center today because they're at KWRI at a lab, and they're working in I think it's like a 4 to 5 hour lab today, possibly. And so they're getting to have a say on what's happening in the tech. If that's something you're interested in, please let me know. Also, we have a tech committee that we're about to talk about. And so that's a good thing to get involved with if you want to get your hands on and experience or have a say in what's happening in the tech that's happening at KWRI. They are listening to everything you have to say. They do want you to break stuff. They do want you to get on to Kelly and ask her questions that she doesn't know so they can get better at answering those things. So definitely keep that under your hat. And then so myself, Scott, and Avis, along with the leadership in Round Rock, will be attending a class in Dallas. We leave Sunday night, from my understanding, and we will not be back till Thursday night. So Scott will be nice and bright and starry on the 5th to teach you Legal 1 and 2. No, I'm sure he will. He has the best energy. So we are just learning new ways to connect you with your people. So we'll be doing that. Avis is working with Scott to find someone who will sit as an interim broker for you for that week. We will all have our phones. We may not be able to answer them the minute that you call. Text is always best in those situations because it's faster for us if we can't get out to take a break. Yeah, definitely there will be people in the office, and Lauren will be here, Ryan will be here, Donna will be here, so they are there for you. However, agent questions will be directed at whoever is broker for the day or for the week. Any questions on that? Okay. And I don't think, at least I know I don't have a trip for the rest of the year, so I'm yours. So I think, yeah, and then I think Scott and Ryan do have a trip in November for Recharge, not Recharge, for yes, Exchange, sorry, John Maxwell's. So they'll be out for a week then. Do you have a passion for teaching? Do I have anybody in here that loves to teach or loves a subject enough that they will teach it? Any brave ones? I am looking for faculty members who'd like to consistently just assist with classes in the Market Center. It could just consist of 1 hour a month. And so if you do have a passion for teaching, or even if it's not at this time and in future you'd like to be considered, of course, to master a subject, it's best to teach it. And that's what I did the first 3.5, 4 years that I've been doing this, just taught everything, even if I had no clue what I was talking about. I was like, I'm going to teach this, right? And NER was one of those things. I taught it for a year with Michelle, and it actually helped me to understand expansion in business at a higher level. So definitely, if you want to expand your horizon, let me know, because I'd love to plug you in. All right, I'm here still. Okay, ALC committees, we need you. We need you to come in and sign up and take part. Different committees are in need of different personalities and skill sets and loves or passions for something. So we have finance, which I would say we probably need 1 to 2 more people. That doesn't need to be a big committee. However, if you don't have a P&L and you want to see how a multi-million-dollar company runs, then this would be a great committee for you to be on. Growth committee figures, kind of works together to find ways to connect you with your downline. So events so that you can invite other agents to, classes that might have panels so that you can invite people to. What does the growth of the Market Center look like in the future? And that would be a great place to plug in if that is a passion for you. We also have culture committee, and that is typically the fun committee. And culture is also this year going to consist of a lot of getting Kellerized and understanding what the systems are and the models are so that you can help to answer questions throughout the Market Center about maybe why something is done the way that it is done. So you're still going to be doing some parties, you're still going to be doing family gatherings, yet we really want you to be the culture seekers for the Market Center. So if you love people and want to just invest in the feeling of the Market Center and how we move forward, this is a great committee for you. Career development, that is a committee that works on trainings. What do you want to see taught in the Market Center? What can I bring? What can we have other agents bring? What panels can we bring you? Where can we take you? That's a great committee to be on if learning or education is a passion for you. And then finally, tech, last but definitely not least. We are working very diligently to make sure that you have all the technology that you can possibly use to protect your business and to grow your business at your fingertips. So tech is a great way to do like what Scott is doing today. Go to KWRI and sit with Gary Keller for 4 hours and just really hash out what is necessary for our agents to be successful. Any questions on those? I would love to see some emails after this meeting of y'all just wanting to step up and take part. We don't expect that you're going to spend a lot of time on this. Of course, your number one thing is your business. However, your input is really, appreciated in the Market Center because it just lets us know what we can do to support you and your business.
Will there be another time that these wonderful folks and others will learn more about these and have a chance to sign up?
Yes, so right now I would say email is best just based off of what I have said, or if you have further questions about a committee, I can put you in touch with the committee chair and you can find out what their one thing is. And we are having our ALC clinic November 5th, and those who are invited to sit on the ALC will then again determine what committees will look like for next year. So it will come out and it will maybe even look different as December rolls around. So however, getting involved now helps set up 2019, if that makes sense. Thank you for the question. Any other questions on that specifically? Any other announcements? Andy, you had an announcement about open houses for builders. Did you want to talk about that real quick?
I'm having a short meeting after our meeting here.
Okay.
For those that might be interested in that.
Okay, wonderful.
I do have something else I'd like to share with the group here.
Sure.
There's a 4-hour free finance and investment MC course in San Antonio, done by Jeff Elias, who's one of the really outstanding finance guys. If you really want to know how to and what to do about financing for your buyers, this guy can teach it to you in 4 hours.
And he's with Gold Financial?
He is really good. And
awesome.
It's free, 4 hours, put on by Gold Financial. And it's in San Antonio. That's the only kicker. But it might be worth the trip for anybody that's interested in really getting to know how to do more business and how to structure financing for your buyers.
Awesome. Thank you.
I take it every year.
Thank you.
It's just such a wealth of information.
Awesome.
Do you have a date on that? Did I miss it?
He posted it in the Facebook site. Yep. So I'll have him, if you'll repost that, Andy, now that it's mentioned, and I think I'm still on. Thank goodness, I haven't been muted this whole time. So, okay. Awesome. So what's happening this week? Today, Scott is at KWRI. Not much else going on the rest of the day, so that just probably means that y'all are out there connecting with the people that are in your database, right? And then tomorrow, we have new agent orientation from 9 to 11. Is that still correct, Lauren?
That is still correct, and that does mean 9/26. 9/26.
Oh, yeah, sorry, 9/26. See, I knew. 27th, yes. That's what happens when you use a template at the last minute. All right.
Yes, orientation is still going on tomorrow.
So yes, tomorrow's orientation and tech orientation is 11 to 3. So if you had questions on what's going on or you need Bruce, be here tomorrow. Don't let him sit alone, because I hear that all the time from a lot of agents that y'all have some tech questions. So it's a great opportunity to sit in front of him, hear what he has to offer with websites, .loop, anything that he's going over, and then plus just get to pick his ear if you're the only one that shows up, which I hope you're not, whoever that might be. And then green sheets, it doesn't matter if you've been here for a while, if you still have questions on green sheets and how do you handle intermediary deals. Green sheets class from 10 to 11, and that is on the 27th, not the 6th, obviously. So Thursday the 27th, green sheets. Friday morning is book club, and that is from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Tom Catlin is running that, so definitely be here.
I think they're gonna wait until October.
Oh, okay, so we're delaying that.
We're delaying that just,
Is he traveling? He's out of
he's in
town.
Greece today.
Okay, scratch that.
So
All right.
it'll be a couple of weeks, I think, maybe the second week in October.
Okay, I'll get with him. And then ins and outs of my transactions. So dot loop, 11 to 12. Last time we had one person show up for that class, and I'll tell you what, this is a fantastic class to be at. If you don't know how to set tasks or reminders or submit things for review for compliance, you should be at this class. It's a great opportunity to figure out how does dot loop work and how can I best use it to make it simple. You had a question.
Well, I was just gonna ask you what it was.
Sure.
So if I've never used Dotloop.
Great class to be at. Yes, Mike.
I have a little cheat sheet for green sheets.
Uh-huh.
If anybody wants me to email it to them.
Lauren, do you want the cheat sheets for green sheets?
I do.
It's from your lesson. I just wrote it all down to make it easy for myself.
Cool.
I just
Yeah.
offered it to anybody that wanted it.
Okay.
Awesome.
Would you email me, Moss at
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, so Bold update. Can anyone tell me what happened in Bold this week?
We graduated.
Yay! So everyone give them a hand. That was 8 weeks, or 7 weeks, 8 weeks with the skip. So 7 weeks of class, and man, did I witness some pretty awesome growth in that class. I'm really excited for everyone. It's pretty phenomenal to see the amount of business, but mostly personal change that people went through in that course. So congratulations. I think we graduated without one person, which is pretty awesome because typically there's some attrition in Bold just because it holds you accountable at a high level. So congratulations to the just recently graduated Bold class. That's my 6th one. So on to 7, right? All right, so skills spotlight. Lauren, can you help me hand these out?
Yep.
I'm hoping we should have enough. Oh no, I'll take half and do half the room. All right, so you may have a pen on you. It would be handy if you had one. If you don't, we'll go through it. And I don't think we have enough. That's okay. Okay, thank you. I can't count. That would be appropriate to be able to count. There you are. 2. And then how many? We're missing.
Who needs one? Raise your hand.
Just one person. So, all right. So this is an excerpt from Business by the Book that wonderful Holly Prescott just came and taught here in the Market Center. Did anyone take that class with us? Who took Business by the Book? What did you think of it? It was pretty amazing, right? It blew my mind. It was the first time I've ever taken it. And it goes over the one thing, which I've been reading mine and working at it, so it doesn't look like a normal one-thing book. Normally it has a pretty nice white cover. And it also goes over the MREA and breaks it down and kind of gives you some ideas of what's in the book and kind of the Cliff's Notes version, and then gives you some thinking points. So the page you have is page 23 of our lesson. And I just wanted to talk about telling your story. And I think one of the most important things when you're working with people is so that they know that you truly care about whatever it is they're embarking on. So their purchase or their sale or whatever's causing them to buy or to sell, right? And to do that, we have to know what our value is, what our value proposition is. Has anybody heard of a value proposition before? Okay, great. Has anyone written out their value proposition before? Okay, so one thing that this book and this course teaches about is purpose. And to really know our value proposition, we should know our purpose, right? And so in the middle of the page it says, purpose, discover what drives you. And so it asks, what's the thing that gets you up in the morning and keeps you, and that's on the first page 23 with the little icebergs. And it says, what's the thing that gets you up in the morning and keeps you going when you're tired and worn down? Your purpose is the reason you're excited with your life. Can anyone read the question in the middle of the book for me, or the page for you, by Gary Keller?
What's the one thing you want your life to be about more than anything else?
What's the one thing you want your life to be about more than anything else? It's a really good question to ask ourselves, right? So I think oftentimes we see, and it's showing the image here that you all see, the little icebergs, that we see the profit that people are making, and we see how busy they are. And often what we don't know is, what is their priority? Why are they doing what they're doing? Why do they work as hard as they do? We see them possibly spend time away from their families, or possibly we see them spend more time with their families, right? And then, of course, what's their purpose? And what's written here, and in the book you'll see the same, is that purpose is the foundation of all of those things, right? So when you're turning the page, we're going to do this exercise. I thought it would be fun to do today only because I think it's really important for y'all to know, or just get a glimpse of, what possibly your purpose is, so that when you're out there making phone calls, or sitting at the farmer's market, which I think is pretty awesome, right? Talking to people who are in the middle of daily activity, who have no idea that they're about to run into someone who could be of service, right? What is your purpose in that? So this exercise is called Discovering Your Purpose. And it says to write down 3 things that you're passionate about, and then write 3 things that you love to do. So I'm going to give you all a couple minutes, and I'm going to have you write down in the I'm passionate, 1, 2, 3, just 3 things that you're passionate about, and 3 things that you love to do. So whatever drives you. So some questions that correlate to that on page 115 of One Thing, Gary has put in questions. For instance, if maybe you're passionate about your spiritual life, you'd say, what's the one thing I can do to help others? What's the one thing I can do to improve my relationship with God? How about physical health? What's the one thing I can do to achieve my diet goals? So what you're doing is just whatever your top 3 are. What are you passionate about, and what do you love to do? For some people, their drive is business. It can be monetary. It could be spiritual. It could be physical. It could be emotional. It could be mental. So it just depends. It's hard. Hard to find out what we love about ourselves, huh? What do we love to do? On the bottom of the page, if you're struggling with this, it says, if you're not entirely sure about what your purpose is, that's okay. Absent an answer, pick a direction. Most people are already living their purpose to some degree. So don't feel bad if you're struggling with these questions. We all do. It's hard sometimes to talk about ourselves. We're in service, right? We're in customer service, if you will, and so oftentimes we think more about others than ourselves. However, it's so important that we find out what those little things inside us that make us tick are, because then we can share them with our clients, or we know how to propel ourselves forward in the way that our clients needs us to. How are we doing? Okay so far? Anyone really struggling with this? Like, I don't know what to write down. Yeah, it's tough. And it could be simple. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. I know, being hard on yourself over there because you don't know what you're passionate about. I'll give you some examples while you're still writing. My first one is, of course, I'm passionate about my family. I love them. I'd do anything for them. 2, I'm passionate about other people's success. I love people. I'd do anything for them. And then 3, I like to sing. And especially when I'm stressed out, I like drive around the block a couple times and just sing before I go home to my 4-year-old, who I know is going to probably be screaming at home, who I'm very passionate about. And sometimes I need to sing more than I need to hear screaming, so I just take a couple extra minutes for myself. So those are my 3 things that I'm passionate about. Anybody else care to share theirs?
Sure.
All right, Janie?
I'm passionate about historic preservation because of where I live.
Sure.
And I'm passionate about my pets. I love to help others. I love to laugh and love.
Love that. Thank you for sharing.
Mine is not as interesting as hers.
That's okay. No, see, we're being hard. That's judgment on ourselves. You're just fine. You share yours,
Okay.
Myrna.
So I'm passionate about my husband, my kids, my family.
Wonderful.
And I'm passionate about helping people, friends and family,
Okay.
and nurturing relationships.
And that's very important. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Yes.
Isn't there a bold law that says don't compare your insides to other people's outsides?
There are.
There you
Yes.
go. No comparison.
That's right. It's all very personal. Our journeys are our own special walks, which is why it's important that we discover these things. As touchy-feely as it is, it's really important to discover them again, because we can only help our clients if we know how we work and how, let's say you're negotiating, and you may find out when you're negotiating that you're passionate about winning over the success of what possibly your client could have if you weren't so passionate about winning, right? So if we know these things, we know how to move forward and work with them or work through them, whether they're, and it's not good or bad, it's just how do we work with this trait and use it as a value. Okay? Anybody else? Yes.
This is a little bit hard for me at first, but then I'm passionate about my faith and my family. To me, they kind of go together, but
Sure.
faith comes first before. And babies.
Okay. I'll drop mine off for you. Although she's 4. She's my baby, though. Oh, yeah.
And helping families with children.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
It's like I always volunteer for that kind of stuff.
Well, and see, that's the thing, right? We find out, again, what's driving us because you have a passion for it in some way or another. I once met a lender who I'm actually personally working with, and it was her passion that drove me to offer my business to her, personal business. And it was because she had a passion to help women who found themselves struggling and lost their children to social services. So her passion was to get them back on their feet, so that way they can, recover their parental rights in most circumstances. So I think, again, it's finding what is that passion that could help you do what's your why for doing what we're doing, right? All right, so I'll share mine real quick, just in case you were struggling with those. So I like to fix things. I like to find solutions as much as possible. I like to spend family time or travel, most of the time somewhere where my phone doesn't work because it's really nice to enjoy. And of course, I love to, again, sing. It's a stress reliever for me. Who else wants to share what they love to do? Myrna.
I love to crochet.
Okay.
I crochet. I should be reading that. And I love gardening. I can't garden right now because the deer eats everything.
Oh, no. Yes.
So, but decorating.
We share that passion.
Yes.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yes. Awesome. Who else? Nancy.
I was saying cake decorating.
Oh, yes.
We talked about that.
Yes. Yeah. Nancy, did you want to share anything? You don't have to.
I put I love to travel and volunteer at church, and that's as far as I got.
And that's okay, because those may be your 2 most, hey, I love to do this. It's okay to have a 1 thing that you really love, or a 2 thing. Anybody else want to share theirs? All right, so at the bottom it says, what's my purpose? And so looking at all of those things and really drilling down, your goal is to kind of just, like what Gary says at the bottom, pick a direction and start marching down that path and see how you like it. Time brings clarity, and if you find you don't like it, you can always change your mind. Good news, it's your life. To anybody else, just yourself, to make sure you're putting yourself in the direction that you want to go. So go ahead and write a sentence down or 2 sentences about your purpose. This day in class I wrote, to challenge others and myself to consistently reflect on my purpose or their purpose and help them to implement solutions to continue to move forward. And I have found since this class that I have done so much of that that it brings me in extreme joy to be able to see how people are progressing just by me asking a few questions. So go ahead and put your purpose down as much as you can, and I'll ask for 2 people to share. You got one in your hand? You're thinking, no? Lunch smells good. I said lunch smells good. Okay, we still got a few more things. Thank you, Donna. If anyone's done and you want to share, I will listen. I just need 2 to share to move forward. I want to hear what your purpose is.
Success.
Success. Tell me more about that.
Well, to me, success is having a great family that all support each other, having faith, of course, and having income to do what you want to do, enjoy life.
Okay. And how are you involved in that success?
So real estate makes money.
Okay. All right. That's right. Just drilling down.
You can't have yes without that.
That's right. Who else? Anybody else wants to share a purpose? Yes.
Okay. To be the best person I can be, and to help those who are going through hard times, and to give them hope.
I love that. I love that. And so I bet that your business looks a little bit different in terms of your service, right? Because you're probably, do you like to sit in front of people more and get things physically signed? Do you like to really walk them through every little step of the matter, maybe? No? Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else that wanted to share? Awesome. I hope that you'll take some time, and this, I know it's just a snippet. I just want to bring you, when I'm up here in front of you, I'd like to bring you a skill that you can consistently use in your business. This is a good tool you need to use to develop your value proposition. You have to know what you bring to the table. You have to know why you're there. Some of these deals, as you might have been through, are a little tougher than others. And so if you know your purpose, you're able to negotiate what's best for your client. You're able to negotiate what's best for everyone, right? You're able to move forward in the way that you know that your client is wanting or that they're telling you because you've had that conversation and you're moving forward with the way that you do things because you know why you do them. All right, so answering those questions. And then if you have the one thing, does everyone have a copy of the one thing? If you don't, come see me because I would love to see how I can get one of these in your hands. It has pages of questions like actions. What's the one thing I can do to assure that I hit my goals? What's the one thing I can do to help my team succeed if you're on a team? Results. What's the one thing I can do to make us more profitable? So if finances are key and maybe you're behind your goals, it's a good question to ask. So once you dig through and find your purpose, then with your purpose you'll be able to answer the what's the one thing. Did that help a little bit? All right, so if you want to talk to me more about this, I'm happy to sit and walk through or help you build your value proposition. Just knock on my door. We'll set an appointment. All right. Next up is seller's disclosure. We already did that. We're going to do coming soon. How do I handle a coming soon? And I'm going to be quick with this. Or I'm going to ask the question, does anybody know how to handle a coming soon? What document do you need to have signed?
Which side are you on?
As the listing. They did away with the checkbox on ABOR. You still might have an active listing agreement. What would you do then? Yes! Limited exposure listing. When do you get that signed?
When you sign the listing.
When you sign the listing agreement. If in the listing agreement it states, my listing starts at this time and it's that day or the next day or the day after that, and you don't plan on putting in the MLS within the certain days required by the contract or by your MLS, you need to have the limited exposure form. Is it limited exposure?
Limited,
yeah.
that's what I call
Yeah.
it.
Perfect. Yes. Mike.
Is there a time on that? I've seen a sign that was close to a listing I have that was, they had it coming soon for about 3 months.
Avis, I can't speak for all brokerages. I can tell you that Avis would prefer no more than 10 days, 7 days is better. Again, as I'm sure what were your thoughts driving by that house? Like,
Well, there's another agent in our
okay,
size.
okay. So possibly the reason why you wouldn't want a coming soon sign hanging out in front of houses too, one, sometimes they forget to change the sign, so you may want to call them and ask. And secondly, just come from contribution, hey, I just noticed the sign's been out for a while, did you forget to change it to active, right? Another question, or another consideration is if you leave a sign out in front of a house for too long, what do you think that possibly other people are thinking as they're driving by? They're repairing things or they're remodeling things. I wonder what they're remodeling. Just, you know, people make stories up in their own heads. So really 7 to 10 days at the most is what I would think she would say.
So not 3 months.
Not 3 months. 7 to 10 days, yes.
So on the limited listing, if you put in the contract that the house is going to be listed on a certain date, say 2 weeks in the future, and you document, you know, that they're on vacation or they're going to be doing repairs or what have you, do you still have to have that additional form?
Do you plan on marketing it while the 2 weeks is in limbo until they're active?
No.
And not mentioning it at team meetings?
Right.
Then possibly you don't have to. I would still have it signed just to be safe. Because what happens is they go on Facebook and they say, I'm about to put my house up for sale, blah, 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 and they get a bunch of calls, or you get a bunch of calls. So I always say just have it signed just in case, because you might accidentally speak with somebody about the house, and until, you don't necessarily want to market it until you have that on there, right? Because there are some liabilities that come with that.
Well, I mean, I haven't marked it.
Sure, sure, yeah.
So does that mean she does or does not have a sign in front of the house?
I don't have a sign in front of the house.
Okay.
If you're marketing the property at any time and it's not actively listed, you need to have a limited liability exposure form on the in your loop signed at listing.
Does that apply to a pocket listing?
I would apply that to pocket listing, yes.
No such thing as a pocket listing.
What's a pocket?
So a pocket listing is, I guess, like just a term that's thrown around to say a listing that's not actively listed in the MLS. That the seller, for some reason or another, has requested for you to not actively market it on an MLS. So the limited liability, the limited exposure form helps with that. Okay?
But we do market that in the office, and we do tell other clients about the pocket listing.
It's up to what your client has asked you to do.
Okay.
It's very specific per client, and you'd want that noted in the box, correct box checked on those forms. If you have questions,
Social media as well?
huh?
Hey, I have a pocket listing, yes?
It depends on the buyer, or the seller, I'm sorry.
All right, I like
It
that.
depends on what they ask you to do. Okay?
Sure.
Any other questions on a limited exposure form?
Well, it sounds like you should just do it.
Ding, ding, ding. I would prefer that you just do it. I can ask Mary for clarification. However, I think it's in your best interest if you're signing a listing agreement and it's not immediately going into MLS, that you could accidentally say, or your client could accidentally say, hey, I've listed my house for this much and blah, 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 then you're going to want a limited exposure form. Okay? Just do it. All right. I guess the TV went off, maybe?
Do your mouse. There you go.
Okay. All right, so right before we have sponsors come in, we're going to tell us about it. So does anyone have new listings they want to share? All right.
Okay, it's actually
Stephanie.
Erica Brothers, and it's in Cimarron Hills, and it's going for $649, and it's 2990 square feet. It's a large corner lot. It's close to 3/4 of an acre with no neighbors directly behind it. It's very close to the clubhouse and has lots of mature trees and landscaping. Single story, built in 2002, 3 bedrooms with an office and a bonus craft room. Master retreat is large with a sitting area, all new hardwood flooring, completely remodeled. Master bath and tons of updates in the kitchen, including pull-out drawers, instant hot water, fresh paint, and hardware on cabinetry. All appliances convey and PID is paid for. Saves buyers.
Public Improvement District. A public improvement district. It's kind of like an HOA that's actually an HOA through a taxing entity. All right. Yes.
I'm here for Virginia, and she has it coming soon. Actually, it'll be listed on Friday. It's at 30222 Oakmont Drive, and that's in Berry Creek, Section 1, and it backs to the golf course. It's a very unique, custom-built home. It was built in 1991, although it is not updated. So it has tons of potential. It's 3224 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2 dining, big garage with a golf cart space, and it's going to be listed at $395.
Thank you.
Got somebody who's been wanting to get on the golf course in Berry Creek. This is their
This is the one.
opportunity.
Awesome.
Do you know if it has room for a pool?
I don't know
What
about the
size?
lot
What
lines and
size?
things
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
Any other new listings that you'd like to announce? Price improvements? Beth?
Me again, I'm here for Virginia. 106 Riverview Cove, that's in River Ridge. Huge price improvement. $319,900 was originally listed, $347,500.
Okay.
So it's a really great house. Would be excellent for somebody who has a home business because of the way that the office has been sectioned off from the rest, the already built-in home office.
Mm-hmm.
Basically. So it's a great house, and there will be an open house there this weekend from 2 to 4
Awesome.
on Sunday.
Thank you. Any other price improvements? Mike?
I have a listing in Serenata, 4106 Coy Trail, and we just dropped it 10,000. It was already the lowest price per square foot in Serenata. It's almost 2 acres. It's one of the largest lots out there. Diving pool. The second part of that acreage has kind of room to grow if you had a family that wanted to add on or have a workshop or something like that. And one reason we kind of haven't had it already lower is just the master bath needs some improvement, and so we priced it well for that. And it has a master bath on one side, and then sort of a just a vanity walk-in closet and a small study on the other side, so you could turn that second side into
A larger.
awesome bathroom.
Yeah, awesome.
Not too much.
So what's the
Okay.
new price?
It was at 400, and now it's at 390.
Okay.
We still had a lot of lookers. You know,
Okay.
Here to look, so give it a second look.
Thank you. Any other price improvements? All right, buyer needs. Any buyers? Myrna?
I need 3 houses. The first one, at least an acre, 3,800 square feet and up. No HOA, 4 bedroom, 4 bath, single story. Price is open.
Okay.
Yeah, and another one, it has to be like close to it in the same subdivision or maybe next door to each other. At least a half an acre, 3,300 square feet to 3,500. No HOA, 4 bed, 4 bath, single story, no price.
Okay.
And the third one is at least half an acre. HOA is okay, but they prefer no HOA. 3 beds, 3 bath, or 2.5 bath, 1 story, 500 or less.
All right. Be watching those homes that are doing price improvements. There'll be some more that are coming up because we're right at that time of year, right, when things slow down and then pick up a little bit and then slow down again, so people will price for that. So, all right, any other buyer needs? All right, we're going to have a sponsor come on in and get you all out there to eat. And it looks good. You ready to come chat with us? Thank you for your patience. I appreciate that. Come on in. Brighten up the room with that wonderful orange shirt.
So I know some of you have shot for before, some of you guys I haven't. My name is Jason Hodges. I own Jason Hodges Photography. I've been shooting real estate since 2011. I've been shooting pictures for maybe 15 years. I'm local here in town, and I kind of wanted to come in and talk to you guys today. I spoke to some of you on the phone, some of you in person before, but I own my own business. What I will tell you that pricing, I can offer competitive pricing with just about anybody out there. I know a lot of you guys have mentioned on the phone that you use some of the larger companies like Tour Factory and some of those other places. What I can tell you about that is I can shoot everything as good as them, and I can guarantee that because I've worked for all of them in the past. But what I found that is if I went out on my own, I could actually charge less and still make more than what they were paying me. some handouts here for you guys. And I've got some business cards, and I'll leave the cards up
Thank
here.
you.
That way it won't take quite so long to pass them all out. In case you want to take one.
Jason, did you say you lived here in Georgetown?
I live in Leander.
Leander?
I work here in Georgetown. I have another job, coach cheerleading and gymnastics over at Rebels Cheer.
Okay.
So I do this on a semi-full-time basis and do that more on a part-time basis. I'm available pretty much any day, anytime. You know, if I need to reschedule my part-time job, I can do that, come out and take shots. I offer photography as well as videography, as well as nighttime shots, twilight shots, tours, aerial photography and videography. Pretty much anything that you're looking for, I can provide for you guys. My basic package starts out at $100 for photos. That would be up to 2,500 square foot. I do not limit the number of photos that I'll take for a listing. So I don't price my photography by photography number. I price it by listing size. And so then whatever that listing will support is what I'll shoot. So if we go out to a 2,500 square foot home and they've added tons of accessories and tons of upgrades and different things on the property, and we need to shoot more than, I think, like for factory standards, like 25 photos. If we need to shoot more than 25 photos, that's not a problem. All of my photos, if they're needed, include touch-ups. I can, you know, brighten up the sky or add blue to the sky if we get, you know, kind of a bad day and it's overcast a little bit. That's not something that I charge extra for unless it's super extravagant. Like if there's 700 trees in the front yard and I've got a mask in between all of those trees, then it might be a little bit extra because it's going to take me several hours to do. I also wanted to pass out to you guys so you can take a look at it. I've got a couple of books here with some of my work in it. This one has got a couple things in it. This is a twilight shot that I had done for a home. And what you'll see is on the front page is the actual shot that I did, and then if you flip it over to the back, this is actually one of the exposures that I used to do it. So this is the exact same time of night, same camera, same settings, before I did any of the adjustments to it. Same thing with some of these pictures here on the sides. It's just your basic exposure shot, and then what I would do. And so I know a lot of people have also said that they use their own pictures, which is great. Honestly, it is not hard to take a picture of a house. The setting up and the taking of the picture is super easy. The difficult part is the post-processing. So like I said, I've been doing this since 2011. I've come up with a couple different algorithms and different settings that I use throughout my photos to make sure that you're being able to see out the windows, that you're getting all of your highlights, you're getting all of your shadows, you're getting all of your color exposure. Yes?
What's a standalone?
For like Twilight or for where?
I'm just wondering what the standalone means.
Where?
The term standalone.
The term.
Right, it means by itself. I mean, the term standalone, I just was wondering where you were looking at on the page that I could speak specifically to what you were talking
It
about.
says aerial video and photos standalone.
Okay, so just aerial photos and just aerial video. So I've got several packages up there. Like if you're doing aerial video and interior photos, it would be one package. And so like the aerial standalone would be just aerial photos, or just aerial videos.
So that would be an example, say for example, we've already had the listing and we've already had a photographer and we have it on MLS, but all of a sudden someone suggests you really do need aerial. So then
Or,
that,
yeah, like I'm getting ready to go out for Megan later this week, and she's got just property. There's no home on it, it's just a plot of land.
Okay.
And so we're gonna do aerial photography, because it doesn't do a lot of good to stand on the ground and take pictures of a plot of land generally. You get much better results if you're up looking down on it and you can kind of see everything.
so I'm being nosy, do you use a drone or do you use an aircraft?
I use a drone.
Do you? Cool. Okay.
I've got quite a few toys. I've got 4 or 5 cameras that I use depending on what the weather conditions are like or what the needs are. I do photos and videos, use different cameras for that. I've got a stabilized gimbal that I use, so I do my videos is like a video walkthrough. If anybody remembers like MTV Cribs, where they would go up to the front door with the camera and they'd walk through the house. That's more kind of like what I deliver for my video. And so that's all stabilized, so it's not shaking around while you're using it. And then I use the drone to do photos. And for most of my drone photos, unfortunately, I don't have any in my lookbook at the moment. I need to update that. But I'll shoot a lot of top-down shots, so we can go up to 400 feet, so the FAA allows me to fly to. Anything above that, we're going to be an airplane. So you go up to 400 feet, and you can shoot the entire subdivision. You can shoot just the property itself. You can shoot, you know, get the amenities included in there. I did one not too long ago for downtown, and it was on 10th Street. So we flew the drone way up and took it back so that you could see the home and all the skyline and see the proximity to downtown.
Cool.
And do you have you figured out licensure and all that for the drone photos? Okay, perfect. So that's a good question to always ask if you're interviewing. You want somebody who does that and knows what they're allowed to do.
I am on Arbor.
Okay.
A verified photographer through them. So,
Wonderful.
Went through all that.
Okay.
I was actually one of the first people to do that. And then, yeah, I am licensed with FAA to find my drone.
Awesome.
So.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Yeah, what about scheduling? Are you flexible? Like if I need my listing to be posted, like.
In 2 days?
So all of my photos that I shoot, so actually getting ready to speak that, all of my photos that I shoot have a 24-hour delivery. So if I come out and shoot them on Thursday, you'll have them back by Friday.
So give them some time and plan accordingly and set expectations with your sellers.
Want them back the same day, and I'm not thoroughly booked that day, as long as it's a possibility. I do offer same-day delivery. It's an additional $40. And generally, I set that up in the morning. Just come out and pay them in the morning, and you'll have them back later that afternoon. As long as, like I said, if I don't have 3 houses set up that day, I'm fully booked, and it's not always a possibility.
Awesome. So we're going to let him kind of hang out, if you'll hang out for just a few more minutes while they're getting lunch, and if you want to ask questions or maybe schedule him for something,
Yeah,
he's
there's,
here.
Nacho tacos out there, so there's some chips and there's some taco meat in the crock pot, and then lettuce, cheese, and spinach.
Yummy. Thank y'all so much for allowing me to present to you today. Thank you for lunch. Can we give him a hand? Yay. All right. Y'all have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Crystal.
You're very welcome.